Hello, everybody. My name is Ruben Gallego, and for my presentation today, I'm going to be talking about social justice messages in sports. So, my three main topics are going to be sports viewership in 2020. What are the numbers, and what do they mean? What could they mean? Number two, I'm going to be talking about the pros of social justice messaging and just what are the good things about it. And number three, I'm going to be talking about the cons of social justice messaging in sports and, just a few of the potential bad things about it. So, before I really get into it, I'm not going to be talking about the historical components of social justice messaging in sports, but I do want to cover one thing, and that's John Carlos and Tommy Smith. John Carlos and Tommy Smith were two track and field athletes from San Jose State, right in the neighborhood of De Anza College, and they came in first and third, respectively, at the 200-meter sprint in the 1968 Olympics. And during the medal ceremony, when the national anthem was being played, they rose their fists uh, in solidarity of the Black Power movement and for the civil rights movements that were going on at the time. In doing so, they were met with boos and jeers from the crowd, and they were subsequently suspended and kicked from the Olympic Village at the time. In the bottom right, there's a picture of Tommy Smith and John Carlos in front of a statue that was erected for them at San Jose State in 2005. And just recently in 2019, they were actually inducted into the Olympic Hall of Fame. And I'm from San Jose, so this is a story my dad used to tell me. He was from San Jose as well. And so this really hits close to home for me. And although I'm not going to be talking about the historical aspects of social justice messaging in sports, there is a long, rich history of social justice messaging, including John Carlos and Tommy Smith. So, in 2020, as leagues were beginning to return from their COVID-19 forced hiatuses, there were discussions of their aims to return in July and August of 2020. During this time, George Floyd's death occurred and subsequent protests, and it was at the forefront of everyone's minds. And so the leagues decided to address that they felt they need to address the situation ongoing. And Jalissa Castrodale Vice actually reported about some of the ways in which teams and leagues decided to address the situation, including a couple teams, the Oakland Athletics and Tampa Bay Rays, who made $100,000 donations to respectable African American and minority supporting organizations and charities. So once the teams and the leagues did return, they seen very low ratings. The four major sports being NBA, NHL, MLB, and NFL, all seen low ratings in their returns and the subsequent weeks and months of the returns. NBA Finals down nearly 50% from the prior year and actually hit all-time lows for their NBA Finals on viewership. Stanley Cup Finals were down 60% from the prior year, and NFL regular season was down 13% from the final year. And these are all Nielsen ratings reported by John Lewis of Sports Media Watch. And here you see a graphic that shows a slew of leagues and sports and their ratings drop mainly. There's a few teams with leagues with higher points as opposed to the prior year, but many of these teams and sports seen very low ratings on their. So why did they see low ratings? There's a slew of differing views on why this is. One being the introduction or the forefront of political stances in sports. Ted Cruz, a Texas senator, uh, claimed and believed this was at least part of the reasoning for the low ratings of the NBA at the very least. Uh, some people some people believe that it was the fact that there were so many sports that they end up inadvertently competing with each other. Uh, Leander Sherlakins of Yahoo Sports reported about a sports equinox happening, which is just a point or period in which several sports are all on TV at the same time, and that was occurring for the first time ever. The NBA, MLB, NHL, MLS, and the NFL were all on TV at the same time, which had never happened before. And so all these leagues were competing with each other. Another viewpoint is that it is an election year. It was an election year, and typically in election years, more people are tuning into news broadcasts as opposed to sports broadcasts because they want to keep up with the presidential elections. And seeing as though it was a very historical election, many people were tuning into it as opposed to tuning into sports. And there was also one other viewpoint presented by Ben Strauss of the Washington Post that it appeared that there may even have not been a drop, and that the total minutes of the NFL and the MLB are actually up several points on total watch time, but that just the average viewership was down, but that there actually was a small increase in total viewership for the leagues. So, what are some of the pros of social justice messaging? It provides a platform. It provides a platform for spreading messages and ideas that otherwise might not have a platform to exist. Some of these athletes wouldn't have the platform they have a platform because of sports, and they're allowed to spread ideas, and they're allowed to hear ideas from other people and spread them in a place that otherwise they wouldn't be able to. One other pro being the ability of players to group together and force even larger action, putting pressure towards their teams and their leagues to respond. Ramona Shelburne of ESPN reported about the NBA Players Union going about coming together and getting the league, convincing the league to paint Black Lives Matter on the courts of the NBA courts, and also having large ads for supporting the Black Lives Matter movement and getting donations for Black Lives Matter movements and relating charities and organizations. What are some of the cons of social justice messaging, though? For many people, they see and hear politics everywhere, and they feel that sports should be an escape from reality, that we shouldn't have to worry about our political stances and our political differences, and we should all be able to come together in sports. And some people, without that, sports is just another news outlet, they feel. One more viewpoint is that some of these athletes are very busy and they may not be informed. This is actually the reason why Michael Jordan wouldn't involve himself into political activism during his playing career. In a 2007 interview with Larry Platt, Michael Jordan stated that the reason he did not express his support for a senator during his playing days was that he wasn't fully informed on the senator's ideas and ideals. That although he privately supported him, if somebody were to ask him about the political stances and the political nuances of the senator, he wasn't able to express those properly. And so although these athletes are very busy, and some of them, although they wish to be, they may not be fully informed, and potentially they could be spreading messages that they are not fully informed on, and that may actually have a different direction than they believe they do. And one last con of social justice messaging is the audience loss that leads to potential revenue loss. Jay Busby of Yahoo News reported on a Yahoo News poll that was conducted. Just about 2,000 Americans participated in the poll. And in it, 19% of Democrats and 53% of Republicans stated that their sports viewership had decreased directly due to social justice messaging in sports. So it's a bit of a bipartisan issue more so leaning one way, but across party lines, people decided that they didn't like social justice messaging and that they decided they weren't going to tune in. And so that could lead to potential revenue loss and potential loss of the platform that the leagues may believe or at least thought that they had. And so that is my presentation. Once again, my name is Ruben Gallego. My presentation was on social justice messaging in sports. We went over, number one, the statistics of viewership, that it was down amongst leagues, but there isn't an apparent explicit reasoning for why. It's a bit of a mixed bag, it seems. Went over two, the pros. It provides a platform and a place for people and players to rally for large organized support. And we went over the cons, and the number one being the loss of audience and loss of potential revenue, and the loss of the potential platform that these leagues at least thought that they had.